sinivusele sinemukele amasatla amahle lomhlahlelweni Kusile breakfast so vele ishayile insimbi esithupha nomhla ekseni lokusho kona ukucala kwelihlelo. Thank you so much for joining us today. Sazama ukuthi nibe nelanga lelihle nalibusisekile. Sesivele siyayiphetha kusele kancane ukuthi siphethe inyanga yenkwekweti. Sesivele singena kiyo inyanga yenhlaba. It is the 30th of May 2023. Good morning and welcome Sfiso. Good morning.
Very good morning, Lulu. Sizawulenza nzaba ukuthi siyaphetha inyanga ya May. And you know, nasiphetha ke inyanga ya May kusho indaba letiningi lapha eveni, especially on the economic side of things, because siyathi ukuthi Central Bank of Eswatini every month release a monetary policy statement. We will take a deeper look at that today later on the show.
Yes, laphenze ke sikhulumisane na PRO noma ke communications welibandla ye-Elections and Boundaries Commission. Njengoba kumele ukuthi ema-elections are a democratic process lapho khona sivo semaswati sinelungelo kanye ne-responsibility kokuthi sibe ingcenye yalo ema-elections. Emaswati ke ane-duty also kokuthi arejistele wona ema-elections ukuthi batawukhona ukuthi bakhethe loyo muntu wabo labafisa ukuthi angene eParliament. Yodwa kumlekene ukuthi i-voter registration iqalile kule nyanga lesetulo mhla ka-10 May kuya kumhla ka-14 June 2023. So service amaswati solo sisenaso sikhathi kungimanje nje bamvula sebabhalisile balinganiselwa ku-249,844. Lokhu ke kufaka ekhathi bamvu besilisa labangu-116,988 bese kuthi besifazane bona bangu-132,856. Sisida besikhulumisana ke naye Embonisi Bhembelo ngu-PRO kubuka bani nje ukuthi umthetho we-voter registration weminyaka wa-2013 uthini ngalolu khetho. Lokunye ke la kuveta konje lona mthetho uyaveta ukuthi bantu labaqualify ukuthi bavote kumele ukuthi kube liswati lesihleli lapha ekhaya eSwatini iminyaka lesihlanu kuya idulu liswati leselifikile ku-18 years. So sidaba nje sikhulumisana naye kabantu kuva ngato leti tindzaba leti. I think kulokumcuka nje bamvu labesola bakubuta ka social media indzaba ukuthi ngabe kudeleni ema-ID cards ema-election cards this year. I think dasichazela kabantu Embonisi Bhembelo mhla ekseni 7:30.
Ngiyafuna kuvala lumani nje mawukhuluma naye PRO wakhona ka EPC indzaba kakhulu lebutwa sive indzaba ukuthi njengoba kuthiwa kuvota lona 18 years uma ngabe ke lo 18 ngimhlanganisa sesithi nje mabomnga August ngoba sithi nje kungaba ngomnyaka lomusha ngabo January sibe sesitshela ukuthi mina nje nangabe ngina 17 nga January kuthiwa sengina 18 ngibe ngiphethe wes 18 le nga August. I do want to get a clarification ngiyakuphathisa because I do have I have siblings labana about 17 years labafuna vote. Anyway, we will continue with the show later. In fact, 6:30 we do have local analyst, economic analyst Thembinkosi Dube following the governor of the Central Bank of Eswatini, Dr. Philip Mnisi's published monetary policy statement for the month of May. It is another statement that has remained in the fashion of raising concerns from the consumer about raising or rising cost prices of just about anything. We will be joined by economist Thembinkosi Dube, who will provide his insights in unpacking the interest rate and inflation, which has once again risen as presented in the statement, as well as what to expect with regards to the country's economic activity. We will also take a look into, the economic policy statement, the annual one now, which was presented by Dr. Philip Mnisi Happy Valley last week, just to unpack it, saying ensuring price and financial stability in a volatile economic environment. Russia-Ukraine war, the ripple effects of the war and other, situations like Lapayeveni and that have spilled over into the economic outlook. Thembinkosi Dube, local analyst, will join us 6:30 to unpack that.
All right, so stay with us. It's 4 minutes after 6. Let's take a break. Stop in about it for Eswatini.
change in technology, out-of-home digital media is designed to grab the attention of people who are always on the go. You can now watch your favorite show, Kusile Breakfast Show, and Tinzaba at 7 on your favorite YouTube channel.
It's simple. You can stream these shows by following these quick, easy steps. Number 1, open YouTube. Number 2, search for Eswatini TV and click on Eswatini TV. Number 3, after you had entered on Eswatini TV, look for Tinzaba or KPS. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell button to get notifications of our video uploads and streams. And lastly, enjoy the stream. Stay home and watch Eswatini TV. Stay safe.
Welcome back. Sakuvusela nawe losanza kuzivulela nomhla ehlelweni Kusile Breakfast Show. Asibuke nathi indzaba tetfu desiswati. Kuyasonzela ukuthi umthetho lotawubuka kusebenta kwe-Royal Science and Technology Park ukuthi uphase live likhone kuzuza ngaleya ndzawo. Lokhu kulandzela ukuthi umthetho losakhankanywa we-RSTP ungene endlini yetimphunga. Umthetho losakhankanywa ungeniswe indvuna yetekwatisa tekuchumana nebuciko eNkhosatana Sikhanyisa ngomsombuluko.
Le khabo songcondvo wemaswati le uthi tana kwakhiwa lo msebenzi banganiketwa emagunya ekuthi babambe umsebenzi we National System of Innovation lokusho ukuthi lo msebenzi we live we tekusungula imisebenzi event lo msebenzi lona ke so uniketa RSTP lemthetho uniketa RSTP emagunya ekwenda lo msebenzi abese sengona lo watiwa ukuthi ngibona ulihlahla ndlela lo msebenzi event. Kwesibili mengameli le Royal Science and Technology Park solo uthi na lo msebenzi usungulwa ubekwa inkosi ivula kwase sekubonakalisa ukuthi naletikweni kufuneka ligala leliphatha uhulumende lelitawubuketa letindzaba telicwaningo netekusungula emasu eveni. Lokusungulwa ke kwaleligala lelileka uhulumende kusho kona kwekuthi lo mthetho kufanele ukwatise lokho ubese uyahlukanisa kwekuthi le etikweni thina sibuke temthetho le esongcondvo amaswati ngibona labenda lo msebenzi nalemikhiqido.
Imvana lelitiko letasekhaya mfana Nkosilindiwe icela timphunga usebente ngekuphuthuma umthetho losakhankanya lotawubuka tindzaba tekubhaliswa kwebantfwana imishado kanye nalabashonile kulokunye. Imvana ithi balitiko bafise lo mthetho losakhankanya uphase isingakachithwa eParliamente. Imvana ithi lo mthetho losakhankanya ubaluleke kakhulu njengoba uhlanganisa imithetho lemidzala leyehlukene yalelitiko.
Lokube ngundzabamlonyeni ngalomthetho losakhankanywa yindzaba yekuhlukana kwebantfu labatsetsene ngesindvu kutsatfwa kwengwati kuze kubonakala ukuthi ngubani uyise wemntfwana kanye nokushintshwa kwetibongo.
Umfati noma ngabe wende ini noma bekumbe emhlabeni kambe sekwehlukene noma ngabe awusamfuni nganani kodwa nateki walikhaya nateki ukhanze sumbe emhlabeni awusamdzinga awusamfuni makhele khona lapha eqadzini kepha ke lenza ukuthi akuhlukwane nokutafuna ukuthi kambe indvuna ilichaze igama ukuthi yini kwehlukane.
Kukhona lapho kusho khona lana kulomthetho usina ubeleka umntwana esibhedlela utawuphuma lo mntwana umati ukuthi babe ngilona make ngulo
lana bathi umbumso uyasishintsha sibongo sakhe ingabe mina nje ngasuka iningi etiko ngifike ngicela ukuthi akusengifuna kuba wakafaniveki bangangivumela yini.
Indvuna yetasekhaya umntwana Nkosilindiwe iphendvulile.
Lo mthetho lesitokwenza lapha ukubhalisa kuphela nasibhalisa ke
besivele sibhalisa lapha manje shothi nje timpunga lehloniphekile tati besivele sibabhalisa lesibahlukene lapha ekutekweni into le akusiko lokusha lokuchama nalomthetho lona bakhona vele bamvu lokwenza ukuthi ba discover umfalo ukuthi wakuphi sesibabonela abanye sebashintshile awumani ke umani ushintshe nje lesibongo ehhovisi uyafika bakuphenyisise bakuphenyisise kubuye bofakazi kubuye umphakathi kubuye wonke umuntu bathi ochaza ukuthi vele bayathi lenza banalo vele nje iprocess lenza akusiyo lencane iDNA ikhona kulomthetho ikhona kulomthetho vele itawusebenza kulomthetho bane nje ngoba ukuthi uhulumende kwanyalo singaka afford ukuthi angabhadala le DNA for wonke umuntu lo thina sofuna ukubona silomfana wakhe noma kepha sifakile isikhala sokuthi uhulumende nasanemali azakhona ukuthi angayibhadalela lento utayibhadalela.
Timbunga setitawufundziswa kabanti ngalomtsetfo losakhankanywa kungakapheli leliviki bese sive naso sifaka imivo. Ndzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Themkosi Mavimbela ePhalamende.
Imvana ilitiko letekulima Jabulani Mabuza ithi isikhwama sekwesekela abalimi labalima ummbila esatiwa ngahamba ubuye sitawudlala inzima lenkulu ekhuliseni linani lembila lelikhicitwa lapha lokutawuqinisekisa ukuthi leSwatini liba nekudla lokwanele. Imvana ithi kungumanje elizinga lekubuyisela le mali liku-92%. Beyikhulumana isukumisa ngalokusemthethweni lohlelo lapho tinkampani letibambisene kulomsebenzi tisayine nesivumelwano sekusebenzisana lokuyinhlangano lethuthukisa abalimi eSwati kanye nenkampani lethenga ummbila iNMC.
Lesikhwama sekwesekela abalimi bembila eSwatini sihlose ukuthi kukhicitwe ummbila ngelinani lelisetulu kude live lingawesweli ummbila lite lifike esigabeni sekuthenga ngephandle. Kungmanje bangetulu kwa-70 balimi labafake ticelo kanti ke bangi-17 lesebazuzile kulesikhwama. Ikhulumana isukumisa lesikhwama indvuna yelitiko letekulima Jabulani Mabuza ithi uhulumende ufake imali enganga-44 million emalangeni kulesikhwama.
Lesikhwama siconze ukuthi wonke ummbila lodliwako lakhaya eSwatini uchamuke la Swatini. So ke sasikhanze ukuthi kunesikhebesi ngoba i-consumption yembila ekhaya nge-140,000 metric tons. Eminyakeni lophelile ke sikhona kulima 127,000 metric tons. ISwati ke kwase kuthiwa thola ke ama-farmers eSwati labana 5 hectares kuyetulu kungaba individually kungaba igroup yama-farmers ukuthi bakhethane mhlawumbe kuleyo area lalaba khona bese ba-identify bahlanganise emasimabo sebayabuya ke beta eSwati bathi nayi indzawo thina sifuna kulima ummbila silimele live kuze kubede ummbila lesiwuthenga ngaphandle.
Umphathi wenkampani lethenga ummbila iNMC Mavilavilane uthi ke eMaswati laneshisekelo yekulima kepha ke ede umhlaba kasonzele kanjalo ke nalawo lede tindvo tekulima.
Siyawacela neMaswati lede emasimu kodwa lafisile ukuthi alime kuthi nawo akavele phambili sitawubona ukuthi khambili lelingentiwa.
Hlelisiwe Manana longumlimi lozuzile uthi ke lolu hlelo lumsite kakhulu kanti ke uphinze wafaka netincomo. Umphathi wenhlangano yabosomabhizinisi Inathi Dlamini uthi ke kufanele sale kubuketwa tindlela tekulima letifaka ekhatsi kusebenzisa tinhlanyelo letifakwe tebuchwephesha ema-GMOs. Kanti ke tinkampani iSwati kanye neMC tibe setisayina sivumelwano sekusebenzisana. Itindzabeni kubika Sontomlangeni kaManzini.
Mashomi Shongwe soyitfolile ibheyili enkantolo lenkulu. Shongwe waboshelwa tinsolo tekubulala umkakhe Digezile Magongo asebenzisana nebantfu labasafunwa ngemaphoyisa. Inkantolo imnikete ibheyili ya 50,000 emalangeni.
Ngenyanga yeNdlovulenkulu emaphoyisa abopha Mashumi Shongwe kulandzela tinsolo tekuthi wabulala umkakhe Digezile Magongo. Shongwe usolakala ukuthi wenda lobucala nebantfu labasolo bangatfolakali. Inkantolo ithi akucaci ukuthi emaphoyisa bese kacedzile kwenta luphenyo lwawo kuleli cala noma cha ngesikhathi abopha Shongwe. Inkantolo ithi akucaci nekuthi ingabe Shongwe ugcinwe esitokisini nje kusaphenywa noma ugcinwe lokhu kusafunwa lalababulala umkakhe. Inkantolo ithi umbuso waveta ukuthi Shongwe wetama kasihlanu kubulala umkakhe. Yengete nekuthi akuveli ukuthi lemitamo yendeka nini nekuthi bufakazi baloko bukhona yini futhi butawulethwa yini enkantolo. Inkantolo ithi umsolwa uyaphika nekuthi wake wetama kubulala umkakhe. Ngandolo ithi kude bufakazi lobukhona ukuthi labasolwa labanye lokuthiwa basafunwa sekudvute kangakanani nokuthi babanjwe. Ngandolo iphinze ithi akuveli ukuthi bobani lalabanye basolwa labasafunwa. Ngandolo yengete ukuthi kude lokuvetwa ngumbuso lokucinile lokungayenda igcine shongwe esitokisini kuze kutekwe leli cala labhekele nalo. Ngandolo ibese iniketa lomsolwa ibheyili ya 50,000 emalangeni yajuba ukuthi abhadale 10,000 emalangeni bese uletha sibambiso lesingalingana imali lengo 40,000 emalangeni. Lenzaba beyisembiko lijaji Sabelo Masuku. Ndzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Themnkosi Mavimbela enkantolo lenkulu.
Umphathi welibandla letekuvakasha kuleli Linda Nxumalo uthi batawugcinisa tinhlelo tabo tetekuvakasha ngaphansi kwezivumelwano se-Triland esihlose ukuthuthukisa tekuvakasha emkhathini weleswatini iMozambique kanye nesifundza sempumalanga eveni le-South Africa. Nxumalo kuvete lokhu ngesikhathi yachaza ngetinkhulumiswano lababenato naletinhlangothi letitsindzekako kule mpelasonto emcimbini we-Bushfire Festival.
Sibonile tindimbane tetivakashi tiqhamuka totonke tinkhalo temhlaba lebetikhona lapha House on Fire eMalkerns. Siyatibongela kakhulu kulapho laba organizela umhlangano. Tingcoco tetfu lesibenato ngetindzaba te-Triland ikakhulukati ngiko lokuthi sekufuneka nyalo le-Triland ibonakale ibe more pronounced. Kusho nje ukuthi kutaba ne-exhibition ye-Triland. Even though lamave sekangakhetha ukuthi sifuna ukuthi phindze futhi kube ne-exhibition ya Eswatini yampumalanga ya Mozambique, but kube nalo Triland lothi ke Triland thina sing-Triland sithi water Eswatini uto experience i-culture water bese soyandlula futhi soya eMpumalanga uyo experience i-scenery ne-nature bese soyandlula soya eMozambique uyo experience the white sandy beaches. So nguloko lesitakwenda ukuthi sikwende kubonakale lolubumbano lwethu kwekusesibambeni. Nguloko ke kuba mcoka ngoba nangabe tivakashi bushfire tibatinengi letibuye baveni la buya nangeshare kuba lula lokho ukuthi sithi position esisobathathu kude kuthi umuntu nakasuka nje eNetherlands noma eFrance athi ngeke phela ngithathe 10 days wamunga ngimspende Eswatini vele baye bafunele ukuthi ba experience emavela more than one. So lokho collaborate nalokubambisana kulelo hlangothi kuyasida lokho ukuthi sithi market kanye kanye siphinde futhi sisave kuma cost marketing nasti market asikanye kanye.
Umphathi wedolobha laseMalkerns Apollo Maphalala uthi batawubuka tindlela tekuthi bangabesekela kanjani bosomabhizinisi bakuleli dolobha ukuthi benyusele izinga lemkhicido yabo labatayithengisa emicimbini we-Bushfire lobanjalo ngomnyaka kuleli dolobha. Uthi basetawuhlala phansi babukisane nalabasomabhizinisi ukuthi lokhu kungentiwa kanjani.
Njengobe umcimbi we-MTN Bushfire uba sedolobheni le-Malkerns, lokhu kubeka bosomabhizinisi bakuleli dolobha ethubeni lelihle lekuthi bakhangise baphindze bathengise imikhicido yabo. Umphathi waleli dolobha Apollo Maphalala uyachaza kwekuthi bosomabhizinisi basitakele kangakanani kulo mcimbi.
Bosomabhizinisi labancane laba bakhona lapha baningi kakhulu. Nathi futhi ke njengelidolobha sivele sinezivumelwano nema-organizers e-Bushfire lokuthi kube nebantu abasuka khona la Malkerns laba vele baniketwa tikhala tekuthi bangakhombisa imisebenzi yabo noma bathengise lokho lebakuthengisako. So vele iyasita kakhulu lapho ke sehlangothini labo somabhizinisi labancane. Kepha ke nalaba labakhulu bosomabhizinisi titolo nje letinkulu esitatiko lapha tiyazuza kakhulu ngesikhathi kunalabantu makuphela lo msebenzi noma siyahlala phansi sibuyekete lokuthi kusebenzeke kanjani kulo kubuyeketa lokho ngilasifike sibone khona ukuthi yini into lengafuna siyende kangcono ngilasifike sithole khona ama tastes ebantu ukuthi into lesethamba nyalo semnati noma kwawona lama products ethu lesiwadayisako sikubosomabhizinisi labancane sibone ukuthi abantu seba prefera naka package kanje. So tonke letinto leto ngesikhathi sesihleli phansi bese siyabonisana ukuthi no lokusho ukuthi kufuna nikugucule emajani noma ebomaka.
Uthi batimisele kwesekela labo somabhizinisi kude bazuze ngalokuphelele kulo mcimbi. Etindzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Nelsi Wendla ngamandla embabane.
Inhlangano lehlela umcimbi wekucanca intsaba emahamba gorge hiking semewedele ngalokusemtsetfweni tinhlelo tekusita imimango letitawubita imali letinkhulungwane letingemakhulu temalangene. Le mali itfolakala emcimbini walonyaka wekucanca lentsaba.
Bangetulu kwetinkulungwane leti-250 bantfu labangenele umkhankaso wekucanca intsaba imahamba gorge lonyaka ngaphansi kwesicubulo lesithi hiking towards empowering the youth. Sihlalo welibhodi lemahamba gorge hiking Dixon Khumalo utsi imali labayitfolile kulomkhankaso ibese isebenta kunaka tinhlelo letiqhutshwa tinhlangano letitfutfukisa imimango.
Kokuqala elihlangothi lesingathi crime prevention program lonyaka ke sithithe asikhokhe 30,000 emalangeni lotawuniketwa labatabe bengamele lo mkhankaso wokusaphindze sangena ke kumkhakha wesibili lesithi youth empowerment program kusho ukuthi kuhlomisa abantu labasha ngemathuba ekokuthi bangene emisebentini yokuba somabhizinisi imali ke lapho lesiyikhokhile ithi 50,000 emalangeni. Wesithathu umkhakha wesithathu singathi i-community empowerment lapho ke kunemali lapha lephumako lengi-10,000 emalangeni letawenganyelwa i-board of trustees yemahamba gorge lodge.
Umphatsi sifundza saseshiselweni Peter Mamba ubongele lenhlangano ngalelu sito leli letsako eveni.
Bangikhomba lokuthi bendani na ilisito lolukhulu ke nami sengikhona itawutatabukiswa ngeni kuthi le organization ingafeli kunoma ngangani ichubeke iye embili.
Sihlalo wemahamba gorge uphindze wayala tinhlangano lesetisekelwe ngale mali letfolakale kulomsebenzi kutsi tinakisise kutsi tiyisebentisa ngendlela lefanele. Lobika-ke endzabeni Eswatini TV nguthande kuhle Mdluli ngisenhlangano.
Emaphoyisa abophe emafutsa lamabili labuya eveni leNingizimu Afrika kanye nelelesotho latfolakale ebebe umakhalekhukhwini wesive lebekatse side emcimbini webushfire eMalkens kulempela somvo. Lokhu kuvete umchumaniso wesive nemaphoyisa phindile ivilakati nakaniketa umbiko wekuthi ihambe kanjani impela somvo njengobe bengileyo libekatse nemicimbi leminingi.
Ube khona ke lese bafuna kusenyela inyama emantini sisachubeka nawo umsebenzi bahlasela ke letivakashitetfu emathendeni bagcekeze emathende bawasika bathatha impahla kanye netimali. Maphoyisa ke njengokufunga kwethu ukuthi asiyulala asivele sente njalo ke kube nemajaha lamabili laboshwa ke ngaleso sendo lokufaka ikhathi lijaha lelibuya eveni laseLesotho nalelibuya eSouth Africa. Abekselwa eminyakeni lengi-27 budzala atawuthabingelela inkantolo nje kusasa kulandzela ukuthi batfolakele lapha ekunene baphindze kwatfolakala impahla yarecoveka impahla lengalinganiselwa kuma-cellphones labo 20 ngebunengi. Kule kunye-ke sibe nayo umuntu lohlaselekako kulabo lebebavakashile lebesathide kuvakashela kuletinye tindzawo lapha kubozulwini watfolakala-ke kunene sebambambile inkunzi bathatha imoto yakhe bahamba naye beta edolobheni laseMbabane. Ngiyabona bekunene bebacabangele ukuthi emaphoyisa ale eMalkens kuphela kanti simaphoyisa besikane kusekutonke tindzawo nabathi bafika edolobheni laseMbabane bekunene babona emaphoyisa awu bavele basale balahleka endzaweni kanti-ke bese bahlukubete edzadze lobekakhona kuleyo moto naye-ke lo mnikati wale moto lo bese bamukele emakhadi akhe asemabhange konke-ke kugcine kurekhaveka lokuyimoto kakhulukati.
Superintendent Phindile Vilakati ubese uchaza ngesigameko sekubulawa kwebantfu endzaweni yaseLunze.
Sibone isibhunu esibulawela sekubulawa kwabantu lababili ekhaya linye lekungumake nemntfwana wakhe longumfana kwaphindze kwalimala umfana loyintombatana kulowo mzukuzuku lapho khona indvodza lebeyihlome ngesibhamu ifike yashaya yabulala laba bekunene lesolo manje siyifuna.
Emaphoyisa athi bantfu labenta bucala batawubhekana nemtsetfo. Uphindze wecwayisa sive ukuthi singatithatheli umtsetfo etandleni taso. Etindzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Nelsi Wendla ngamandla eMbabane.
Umphathi webandla lelibukete emakhono nemasiko Stanley Dlamini selivumise bahlabeleli bakuleli Emsebenti labawufakako ekutheni bakhona ukuthuthukisa amakhono abo. Dlamini uthi live kungalisebentela ukuthi liqinise kakhulu ekubambeni imisebenzi emikhulu yokutijabulisa njengoba live linemasiko lakhanga umhlaba. Bakhulumana kachaza ngendlela abahlabeleli bakuleli labakhona ukwethula amakhono abo emcimbini webushfire.
Nile bushfire bongazuthi abasiba lakhaya bovala abanye sebakhweba nje bakutshela bathi hey senisebenzile lokusho ukuthi nabathe sisebenzile abasho mhlambe mina basho kulama artists lala suka agibele lapha estage ngoba sathi ukuthi onke ama artists abukela indlungulo yawo. Uma ngabe ibushfire isihambela kahle kanje kukhomba kona ukuthi live lethu mhlambe kuyamela ukuthi lifake amandla lamakhulu ekhosteni ema-festivals. Utawunaka tsatsoethu ukuthi live lethu liyatiwa ngama-cultural ceremonies. Mhlambe vele nalama-festivals mhlambe nasingathi nje asithatheni advantage ngoba umhlaba uyathanza kudayivene. Lokusho ukuthi nangabe sekuyi-bushfire live lonke limele ithinzi libuka i-bushfire ngoba umhlaba uyasathi ukuthi nakuthiwa kuma-festivals sibantu lesikhona kwemukela vele umhlaba.
Bagibeli betimotolo letibitwa ngema-jeep baseNingizimu Afrika labadibophelele kwelekelela hlangothi lokuvakasha kuthi lithuthuke bakhona kuletha ivakashi letingetulu kwemakhulu lamane. Ngekusho kwa lihlonolo Phitho kungumanje batawucala kuhlanganisa ema-packages latawukhona kukhanga ivakashi letitawuda lapha eSwatini kutoba ingcenye yemkhosi wemhlanga.
Tivakashi letiqhamuka emaveni lehlukene kufaka ekhathi live leNingizimu Afrika betikuleli kutoba-ke ingcenye yemcimbi webushfire. Kuleti vakashi bekunebachubhi betimotolo telihlobo lwe-jeep. Kanti-ke labachubhi baletimotolo talolu hlobo benta sivumelwano sekusebenzisana nelibandla letekuvakasha. Ngekusho kwalehlohonolo Phitho walo lelibandla uthi-ke tivakashi tikujabulele kakhulu kuba lapha eSwatini.
It's about having authentic travel experiences, but most importantly also supporting the local community, like we did when we went for the Eswatini cultural experience, which was very touching. I feel that we don't celebrate our own cultures enough, and we don't tell our own narrative as the SADC countries, as Eswatini, as Botswana, as South Africans, and we need to own this space and start hosting our international guests for these amazing experiences.
Umphathi welibandla letekuvakasha Linda Nxumalo uthi ama-jeep inmates aletheke bantfu labatiwako baseNingizimu Afrika.
Ama-celebrities ke siyaye siwa-target sendele ukuthi batokhona ukuthi nangabe bala siyathi bane followership lenengi batawuphindze bajinge basite kusisi promote i-focus ku-tourism eSwatini.
Tivakashi letingenile eveni tilinganiselwa ukuthi tingetulu kwa 30,000 etindzabeni kubika Sontomlangeni eMbabane.
Kutemidlalo umdlali welicembu le-Young Buffaloes labomake eceliwe eNkambule losashaya emagoli langu-137 eminyakeni lemibili lendlulile. Uthi unaso sifiso sokuhamba ayodlalela licembu ledlala ezingeni elisetulu ngaphandle kwakuleli. Nkambule uthi kodwa kwanyalo usafuna uchubeka asite licembu lakhe le-Young Buffaloes ukuthi lichubeke liphakamise etindzebe kanye nelikhethelo lesive sithebe samhlakazi.
Umdlalo webhola yetinyawo ngumdlalo loncoba ngekuthi ushaye amagoli amanyenti kunaloyo lodlala naye kanti esikhatsini lesiningi nalelo cembu liyamdzinga umgadli utawushaya njalo emagolini. Licembu le-Young Buffaloes labomake nalo linayo umgadli longiceliwe eNkambule losasite leli cembu ukuthi liphakamise indzebe ye-league kanye nemicutselwane i-Instacash njengoba sewushaya amagoli angu-137 eminyakeni emibili.
By teamwork. Lendlela esidlala ngayo siyakhona ukudlala kahle, siyakhona ne-understandana ukuthi sibani udlala agcine kuphi. So ngibona kwenta kube lula ukuthi sikhona ukuskorisha amagoli. Angakhona nakwi-offer le-right because this is my talent. I have to spread it everywhere I go. So ngiyathemba nekubambisana simane nema-teammates ami batawenta ukuthi kube lula ukuthi basi-recognize there and there.
Kanti yena Nkambule ngabe wentiwa yini ukuthi angawashaya amagoli amanyenti ekhethelweni lesive.
Abathi lokho kusala ngale kule technical team because isikhathi lesiningi suke bade ukuthi ema-games anini but bona bafuna isijima lesikhashana lesincane kaningi. kahle kahle sisengekho kule level ngabe sibamba ngayo laba ngaphandle.
Kusizini ya-2021-2022 uNkambule washaya amagoli angu-84 kanti kule senza kuphela ya-2022-2023 ushaya amagoli angu-53. Lobikela umsakathi Eswatini TV kutemidlalo ngilinda Dlamini eMbabane.
Satiphethe indzaba tefu ngaleto temidlalo simakhuhlatsana nathi lamhla ekuseni esibahlole emakethe sitabe sichubeka sinshine simo setulu.
Provide a loving home through the official Banfa Bed for Child Foster Care program.
Foster care is the temporary placement of a child who is in need of care and protection. The child is placed in the care of a suitable person who is not the parent or guardian of the child. It involves bringing a child into your home to care for and nurture as the state-certified caregiver. You could be the foster parent that our children dream of. For more information, visit our website or give us a call.
All right, 34 minutes after 6. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. In pursuit of its mandate of formulating and implementing sound monetary policy to ensure price and financial stability, the Central Bank of Eswatini pursued a tightening monetary policy stance over the review period, or 12 months. Cumulatively, the bank raised the discount rate by 325 basis points for the financial year, from 4% in April 2022 to 7.25% in April 2023. And more recently, for the month of May, we are wrapping up currently, the CBE increased its interest rate by 50 basis points to 7.75% from April 7.25%. This was said by Central Bank Governor Dr. Philip Nisi. Now, the interest rate hike is in line with the tightening regional and global monetary conditions as most economies across the globe grapple with elevated inflation, which is way above target range. Here's local economist Thembinkosi Dube to help us understand the statement, as well as to give us recommendations as to how we should tread in these trying economic times. Zomba, always a pleasure to have you on the morning show. Kusipema insights akho anguvusele lo mhlekuseni.
Thank you. Ngiyabonga, ngiyakuvusela, ngiphindze ngivusele sonke sivele sibukela iSwazi TV.
Zomba just highlighted, some of the numbers esiwabonile kule 12-month period last year, as well as the 4 months this year, leading up to even May. Recently, simbonile Central Bank Governor, I think just a week ago, atfula annual monetary policy statement with the ensuring price and financial stability under a volatile economic environment. Some of the monetary policy decisions he presented speak to the 12 months, 2022 and the first 4 months of 2023. Utsi Dr. Mnisi, the central bank pursued a restrictive monetary policy statement. The reason why I'm asking you this is because of our past engagements together on this show, where you have criticized some of the way they've approached these statements. Ngiyafuna lokuva ukuthi uma athina the inflationary pressures emanated from elevated food and energy prices owing to the Russia-Ukraine war. That is true. I think every country alludes to that as well. But the way that they have responded, how would you rate the central bank's response to this period with regards to how they have, released Nombolo Lestibonilo every month?
Ngiyabonga. As long as central banks angikhulumi ngale lakhaya kuphela, central banks, let me just use monetary authorities, asebenzisa the policy inflation targeting leyo ukuthi they will always correct the inflation problem with the interest rate. As long as that tool is implemented, they are bound to do what they did. It's not an issue or what.
Yeah.
It's a mechanism that they use. If a car is made out of diesel, no UK, no States, it's diesel. It has to be. So that's the way they adopted, central banks adopted that policy, that to correct the monetary policy, the inflationary pressures, and what is happening in the economic instability, their tool is the interest rate. So what they did, was just that.
My question then becomes, from what you're saying, I'm picking up that this is a global approach, so to speak, that many economies are using the same approach.
Yeah.
Is it an approach as an economist that because there are other approaches, as you've highlighted before, is it an approach that you would recommend for Eswatini?
Okay, I'll split this in two. The first is that Eswatini works as a is part of the global economy.
Right.
So we cannot, as a small fry in terms of the economies, to actually put much of an effect into the global economic policies. Right. So we tend to be trending most of the time. We follow whatever the big guys are doing. Because if as a small fry, I'll give you a very practical example. We are in this common monetary area with South Africa, Botswana, and Namibia. In the region, if South Africa sets a rate, even if we try to stay behind, we've seen some differences where we have margins of maybe 50%, 50 basis points, but we cannot go beyond that. First, because of the agreement of the CMA, which part of those things put us in the conditions where we cannot have much of a gap.
So we can't go beyond how many basis points?
No, there's nothing stipulated. Okay. It's just the mechanism of the whole thing.
Okay.
But it also goes to the issue of the closeness or the way economy Eswatini inayo eNingizimu Afrika. First, sinemabhange langofola Eswatini aseNingizimu Afrika. Lakamga ngaphandle sinalinyelela khaya. So those things affect now ubukale now, because as they have the parent company in South Africa, and if we pay less in terms of the ZAR holdings, of the Rand holdings, it will affect us, because what banks want is more interest. They will take the money into areas that pay more. Yeah. So if they do that, we are losing the forex, which is not good for our CBE. Yeah. So we cannot have a much difference lengulu between the two countries because of that, and so many reasons. Senda nje lokunengi vele nabo. So singathi khanza sesisesimende simadima. For instance, if our interest rate is low, assuming somebody, so if kungafukendeka, then they come here, flood our small economy, and we find ourselves, the locals, suffering. So there is that discrepancy. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is the tool. You ask ukuthi kukhona yini lesingakwenda to kusihlukanisa. I think ema central banks things evolve, right? Things change with time. We know that mechanism, every theory improves. This theory has been in use for many years. I think it's time to review it.
Yeah.
Because inflationary pressures avela ngetindlela letehlukene. Lena lesikuyo ibe ne difference because sibe ku COVID lekinto le shut down the whole world. Yeah, destabilize everything. So wasina sesibuya ke kwaba nale yashutha le inflation. So ongeke uyifananise ne-inflation nje, let's say le nto nga 2010 that was just general inflation.
The normal circumstances.
Yes. So if you're using the same tool that you used in 2010 and you're using the same tool in 2023 that came as a result of a global economic shaking. So ngiko i-clash lento le bekufanele ukuthi I think researchers PhD students, let them go write economists, bayobhala emaphepha, critical analysis with empirical evidence ukuthi this method has been working, but in times where inflation it destabilizes, where global shutdown, we don't have to use this method. We have to use this method, which may be more quantitative easing or whatever. And unfortunately, the fiscus is quiet in this situation, doesn't seem to participate. The economy is adjusted both by the monetary policy and the fiscus.
Yeah. And, you know, as you're speaking, it's quite evident, the empirical evidence is quite even there for the layman. You know, even for me, I'm not an economist, but I can just tell how this unprecedented time with pandemic recovery, the Russia-Ukraine war and other spillovers have affected the situation into something that certainly needs a new approach, as you are saying. So hopefully there will be that review of the approach, because the reason why I was asking you that question is because it is unfortunate that the consumer is bearing the brunt of all of this. And every month there's an interest rate, there's inflation every month. And we don't know where to go. And people always complain, there aren't even enough salary reviews for us to, you know, be able to tread in these trying economic times. I want us to talk about the month of May's monetary policy statement. It came out, I think, a week ago. The CBE increased its interest rate by 50 basis points to 7.75, which was an increase from the 7.25 wa April. Dr. Philip Nisi, we highlight Agutsi inflation increased to 6.1% in April, from 5.6% in the previous month, by the way. What does this mean? What does this mean in terms of, you know, prime lending rates?
Prime lending rates, I think over the weekend, Emma Bang were announcing an increase on their interest prime rate from to 11.25, something like that.
Yeah,
because
exactly 11.25.
Bawa increasile nabo, bearing in mind of what has happened to the CBA. So, logo kuyas affect if you are holding a loan. It's driving the economy into a recession. If we talk of a recession, we're talking of what we are experiencing, we're starting to experience now. Because once people start to shun investments and they spend cautiously, it's a sign, it's one of the indicators of a recession. Because the hike, yenda kokuthi ungasangeni kuma investments because I cost. So you just live within your means, and you spend in real necessary things, which makes the economy even sluggish. So I think economies have to apply other methods to correct the situation. Because if this prolongs, because a recession you can count it after maybe a month or a few months, it cannot be a short period of time. If this continues as we have a problem of unemployment, which is another sign of a recession, you're talking of businesses as sluggish and perform in terms of the financial performance, because for a business to boom, it's not a miracle from heaven. People have to work hard and people have to buy the product as they produce. So if people don't buy the product and people are unemployed, it creates a sluggish economy. So perform. I'll give you a very practical example. When they make cars with the understanding of a target group. They know these are just first-time job players. It's a family car, it's a man car, it's a woman car going to work. They make them according to that.
Right.
Now, that is dependent on the economic performance. That if everything is normal, that is, if a graduate gets a job after maybe in a space of 1 year, then he will be working and getting a permanent job and will buy a Polo. If a man is working and has been working for 10 years, is expected to buy
a GD6.
A GD6. If a wife is taking kids to school, is supposed to drive a Ford Fiesta or Ford, these small SUVs. They are made in that way. Now, what is happening with this economic situation? These people don't fit. You find a person who has been working for 15 years is buying a Polo, and nobody now is affording to buy the expensive car. So it's affecting the economy. It's a global thing. So as you raise the interest rates, you are closing people to get into that sector because it's something lesiyijwayele ukuthenga amabhanga. So if tingathengwa letimoto kakhulu, look at what is happening to our local industry timoto.
Yeah.
You see. So those are the things, it's a spillover.
And I just want to know from you, is it an overarching thing in terms of the cost of goods and services? Is every good and service going to continue to rise in terms of prices? Because that is so concerning.
It's so concerning, and we don't know when we're going to get to the peak. Normally, there is a peak. We are going to a peak. When we get to the peak, then we will start to go down. It's unfortunate we are still on the rising side of the curve.
The IMF's World Economic Outlook, speaking of the peak, it was published in April 2023, just last month. It says that global growth is projected to slightly recover to 3.0% in 2024. But as I'm sitting here, looking at how things are going right now, I'm not so confident that's going to happen.
Yeah. I don't know where they based those figures, but maybe they made some interpolation and then they came up with some decision to that.
Yeah.
But it would be good if we at least get to a peak maybe this year and we start going down. Then that will save the economy. But looking at the way things are at the ground, yeah, I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that as well. But like you said, it's the IMF. Maybe the research is extensive enough to see that come into undertaking of fruition. I want your recommendations, as we continue to experience these kind of situation. What is your advice to the general consumer? The one that's bearing the brunt the most.
Yeah.
And that's the majority, by the way.
I'm a consumer too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll talk
advice to yourself, I suppose.
to myself and to the rest of us. If you can, like I said previously, if you can avoid a loan, please don't. It's not the right time. But if you cannot and you're taking a loan, let it be an investment loan that will generate money for you. But
that's also tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But keep going.
Yeah, not just a loan that I want a loan so I can go to Durban or go for holiday. I think that's not an advisable one. That's the first thing that we can say.
Avoid loans.
The second thing is that where you can cut costs and reduce expenditure, please try to. So we are talking of things you can trim in your monthly expenditure that are really not essential, and then try to adjust to that, and then adjust a lot of travel, because traveling actually chows some money. Travel when it's necessary and when there's a need. Unfortunately, that affects the petrol attendant and whoever is employed in the industry, but that's how we have to survive. We are in that situation. When you are working, you are at a better situation. Use your money wisely, because you don't know when your job is going to come to an end. Unfortunately, is that people who are working as you are working for the station, you've told yourself, I'm here maybe until I'm 60 or until I change the job to a better one. Even permanent jobs are shaken these days. So even a permanent job, you might be a banker sitting there as a financial analyst, but they can tell you maybe in November, we no longer have a job for you. Not because they hate you, but
we did see that with the company around Bochekas. I'm not going to mention names. We did see it a couple of months ago, and it was quite sad because people wanted to file for. But anyway, keep going. It was just a sad situation to see.
Yeah. So no matter how stable your company is, think outside the box.
Right.
Yeah. Make enough savings. Don't just spend all your salary. By the 5th, you are waiting for another paycheck. No. Save your money, use it wisely, such that in terms of some catastrophes, you can sustain those shocks. Then to the general people who are unemployed like ourselves and those who are trying to run small businesses, spend wisely. Wherever you get a job, that's a good job. You work, you do the job efficiently and they pay you. Use the money wisely. Don't, because the tendency is, let me finish this, I'll get another one. What if you don't? So just think for the future. Think maybe a year or two, depending on your savings ahead, that if I don't get a job today and if I'm laid off today like you are, Can I survive until December still eating the same meal, going to the same, dressing the way I do, paying my rent, if you are renting, paying my bills? So you should have that cushion that at least, just like a country that has what they call it 3 months import cover. That's a shock absorber. That at least we can live for 3 months without any problems with the reserves we have. So you need reserves as a human being. Have reserves. At least I can live for the next 6 months, 1 year without a job, not the hand to mouth.
And you know what I'm picking up as you give out these recommendations, I think the general sentiment is that spend wisely. And spending wisely does mean certain businesses will suffer.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at fast food joints. People will have to refrain from that and try patsati kaftini.
Yes.
And in those businesses, there are people that are employed. It's just said how this situation, there's always a majority that becomes affected with every decision that we make. I suppose then the question would be, because we are looking for solutions, I think this conversation between me and you should look for solutions the most. How do we then participate as the general public in trying to help resolve this situation? Because central bank governor has alluded to the fact that there are certain sectors that are key in, you know, trying to sustain the economy in these trying times. We have a breaker down. But how do me and you and that guy behind the camera participate maybe outside of just spending wisely?
I think for these ones, as the general public, we're just consumers. It's the policy maker.
It's the policy maker.
Yeah, it's the policy maker this time. Because my shouting and my toy-toying won't change the interest rate.
Right.
Yeah, so it's the policy maker that has to think for us, unfortunately, both fiscal and monetary.
I suppose that's a great way to end this conversation. Our economist, Thembinkosi Dube, compelling fiscals and monetary policy makers to make sound decisions and maybe try to look into, you know, other means of approaching the situations on a global scale as well as on a domestic scale. Because as he's alluded to all the things that he's just said, we definitely need a new approach to this situation. Thank you so much, Zomba, for your time this morning, providing your insights. We go for a quick ad break. When we return, we continue with the show.
Do you remember the spinning thing? This is us. This picture represents what we did. We were there when coronavirus wreaked havoc in our population. Together with other stakeholders, we formed the first line, controlling the spread of the unknown and unseen enemy of the people. Anxious ourselves, we collected dead bodies countrywide. At the time when no one wanted to come near dead bodies of loved ones, we did care for our fellow citizens. Thank you, the people of Eswatini and teams of first responders.
Five minutes before 7 nomhla ekuseni kwesikhathi sanyalo-ke sithola simo semgwaqo. Ntombenhle Fakutse is on the line already. Mntolo, sikuvuselele nomhla ekuseni, simo kasime kanjani emigwaqweni?
Ngikuvusele Ncumalo, ngivusele naye umbukeli weKusile breakfast show. Imigwaqo elivela kaNgwane singumbutho wembubene sive sesihlolile, imigwaqo leminingi iyahambeka, ikhona tikhinyabethu lapha nalapha. Kepha ngeke timende leyo losebenzisa umgwaqo ukuthi angakhone kufika lapho aphokophele kufika khona. Inani letimotolo ke siyanakanyalo ekseni seliphakeme kakhulu, ikakhulukazi emadolobheni elive, nayo imigwaqo elivela kaNgwane lemikhulu. Nebantu ke labahamba ngetinyawo ikakhulukazi edolobheni kumathapha siyalibona seliphakeme. Siyakhuthaza nje ukuthi bashayeli ababanake kakhulu labo labahamba ngetinyawo etindzaweni tekwewela noma bahamba eceleni kwemigwaqo, liso labo lihlale libabukile ngoba kulesinye isikhathi ukhanza sebangena emgwaqweni bangakacapheli nanabo nje-ke abahlale nabo batigadzile kuze ukuthi bangatholi ingoti basasebenzisa yona imigwaqo. emadolobha-ke omane elivela kaNgwane tiba netemgwaco tiyasebenza tonke ngalokufanele ngaphandle kwelidolobha lelikhulu laseMbabane la khona tiba netemgwaco lapha eMangwaneni tingasebenzi. Kanti-ke sitaladi lesuka khona edorobheni siye khona eSport solo kuyakhiwa khona lapho. Kanti-ke nawusuka eSport uyafika khona eNazarene timoto esontweni eNazarene timotolo lapho tiyamelana kulandzela ukuthi kunamunye umvila lovulekile ukuthi tihambe khona lapho. Sithi nje bashayeli labaqhamuka khona kubo Sibhashini kubongwenya abachubeke basebenzise letinye tindlela letingena ekhathi edorobheni kuze ukuthi bagweme kuminyetelana kuleso sitaladi. Umgwaco losuka khona ehekeni lasengwenya uye kaManzini lokufaka ekhathi Malagwane uyahambeka kude Sikhinyabedo lapho. Kanti ekhathi edorobheni kuMathapha sitaladi leSing First Avenue lesuka khona kaFire sibheke siye khona eMobeni macondzana nje nalapha eMobeni sisebenzise emgwaco khona lapho tivale munye umvila imotolo tiyamelana kulandzela kona ukuthi nakhona lapho kulungiswa wona umgwaco. Lo sinye sifundza sihlolile sifundza saseshiselweni umgwaco long MR8 losuka khona kaLavumisa uye khona eBig Bend lapha ngasemaplotini. Siyanaka-ke kulamalanga khona lapho tisebenzise emgwaco letibhigcene nato takhamuti takuleya ndzawo ijubado natihlahla letiseceleni kwemgwaco. Timphawu tibekiwe-ke kucaphelisa bona abashayeli ukuthi kunemsebenzi lokhona khona lapho sithi nje asinakeni sisawusebenzisa umgwaco. Kanti lo mnye umgwaco lesiwuhlolile umgwaco losuka khona eMsuzaneni ubheke khona eSindwendweni lapha eceleni kwakaShaya kunemhlaba lomunengi lo khona ekhathi emgwacweni kaningi nje kungasiko khona kaShaya kuphela cishe nje kusuka eMsuzaneni uchubeka ngawo wona lo mgwaco kunemhlabathi lomnengi lo wenda kuye ukuthi timotolo tibe nebulukhuni kuhamba khona lapho nangabe tihamba ngelitubane lesetulu. Sithi nje sisawusebenzisa nawo lowo mgwaco asinakeni kakhulu. Ngale kwaloko Mnguni naye umbukeli imigwaco elivela kaNgwane iyahambeka ngaphandle nje kwaleti lesenkishido tisekabedo kungaba kufisela yena umbukeli usuku loluhle naloluphephile basetawusebenzisa yona imigwaco elivela kaNgwane.
Mtolo sibonga kakhulu isikhathi sakho lo mhla ekuseni sithembe nebachube etimotolo batawuchaphela le toti tsikabedo losoti balile sibahlola imakethe masibuya international news.
Sehlelweni lethi lithini libandla siyambonga uNkulunkulu uhlelo liphindze libuyile emoyeni.
Basically ngingathi nje empeleni yabona uNkulunkulu nakadala umhlaba including bantu
leti khathi leti tethenjisiwe ngofundza incwadi yaJohn chapter 16 verse number 33.
The way the gospel has been portrayed nayiletshwa la kubantu yabo yende ukuthi abantu babe offended.
Sikholwa futhi ukuthi sidaphinde siba nabo evikini lelitako sikhulumisa yona lendzaba lesikhuluma ngayo emsakatweni wakho Eswatini TV sibuko semaswati.
Ayijesuke kama lakho likhulu Jesuke
Welcome back. Let's take a look at our international news. Russia issued an arrest warrant on Monday for U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham over comments on the war as Moscow continued an intensive air assault on Kyiv. The capital's military administration said all missiles fired were shot down by air defenses. Read our live blog for all the latest developments in the war in Ukraine.
The aftermath of the latest Russian attack on Kyiv is clear for all to see, with missile debris littered across the road. Just before midday on Monday, the Ukrainian capital was targeted by shelling once more. Unusually, this time, the attack took place in broad daylight.
Everyone is used to the night attacks when we sleep at home, but the daytime is something new. It has not happened in a long time.
As soon as the air raid sirens sounded, most took to the Kyiv metro for shelter. But not all. One government official had no time to make her way underground.
After the air raid siren sounded, we did not have enough time to run to the shelter in the metro, but we were hosted by a cafe in the cafe's basement, where there was a shelter, and people there said that it is now more scary than it even was at the start of the war.
According to Ukraine's armed forces, all 11 missiles launched on Monday were intercepted. This latest attack comes just hours after Russian shells targeted Ukrainian air bases during the night, an attack that Moscow has since claimed responsibility for.
По объектам противника на аэродромах. Цель удара достигнута. Все назначенные объекты уничтожены.
This fresh wave of Russian aggression comes just 2 days after the largest drone attack on Kyiv since the start of the war. Monday's shelling was the 16th attack on Kyiv just this month, a sign that Moscow has stepped up its airstrikes against the Ukrainian capital.
United States President Joe Biden on May 28 finalized a budget agreement with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to suspend the $31.4 trillion debt ceiling until January 1, 2025.
The details of President Biden and Kevin McCarthy's deal to increase the U.S.'s $31.4 trillion debt ceiling came out on Sunday, now placing the ball in the Congress's court. The bill must pass through the House and the Senate before the 5th of June deadline.
I strongly urge both chambers to pass that agreement. And it takes the threat of catastrophic default off the table, protects our hard-earned and historic economic recovery, and the agreement also represents a compromise, which means no one got everything they want.
The deal would raise the debt ceiling for 2 years until after the presidential election, with an estimated debt increase of $4 trillion. It would cap increases on budget spending previously planned by the Biden administration and toughen some requirements for access to government aid. The 99-page bill will need a simple majority to pass through the House before moving on to the Senate. But the text includes compromises which neither the hard right nor left are likely to support. Several Democrats criticise the spending freeze, whilst hardline Republicans, with their zeal for austerity, say they'd prevent the bill from passing in the House.
This deal is insanity. A $4 trillion debt ceiling increase with virtually no cuts is not what we agreed to. Not going to vote to bankrupt our country. The American people deserve better.
But Kevin McCarthy dismissed threats from the opposition, claiming that over 95% of House Republicans were likely to vote for the deal. The bill will be voted on in the House on Wednesday, which could then send it to the Democrat-controlled Senate.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said he would dissolve parliament and the country would hold an early general election on July 23, following the results on Sunday's local elections.
It's an unexpected move from Spain's Prime Minister. After the victory of the right-wing opposition in local and regional elections on Sunday, Pedro Sanchez, head of the ruling left-wing coalition government, called a snap general election for the 23rd of July, 5 months before the next election is due to be held.
Even if the vote yesterday had a regional and local effect, the meaning of this vote sends us a message that goes beyond this. So as the head of the government and of the Socialist Party, I take responsibility for the results, and I think it is necessary to respond and submit our democratic mandate to the popular will.
Sunday's vote saw the People's Party win in regions including Valencia, the Balearic Islands and Aragon, which were previously secured by Sanchez's Socialist Workers' Party. It also gained absolute majorities in the Madrid region and City Council. But since the People's Party did not gain majorities in many of the newly won regions, it will need to negotiate with the far-right anti-immigration Vox Party to form local and regional governments. According to some analysts, Sanchez, who has been in office since 2018, plans to capitalise on the fear of the People's Party uniting with Vox at a national level in order to rally voters. His call for an election was welcomed by the leader of the People's Party.
Bien, empezamos, si les parece. I want to thank the majority of Spaniards who yesterday sent out a very strong message about the direction they want our country to take. Today, I ask for the support of the citizens to be the next president of the government of Spain.
Sanchez's coalition government has put Spain's economy on par with some of the fastest growing in the EU and introduced seminal new laws, including menstrual leave. The setback comes just weeks before Spain is due to take over EU presidency on July the 1st.
And in Africa, Nigeria's new president, Bola Tinubu, vowed at his swearing in on Monday 29 to expand the economy by at least 6% a year, as well as to lift barriers to investment, create jobs, as well as unify the exchange rate, while also tackling rampant insecurity.
Taking over the presidency of Africa's most populous nation and the continent's largest economy, 71-year-old Bola Tinubu is promising to build on the legacy of his predecessor, Muhammadu Buhari.
That I would be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and that I will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution.
Bola Tinubu has pledged to unite all Nigerians, this despite his election being contested in court by opposition parties. During the campaign, he promised to create jobs while investing in agriculture and public infrastructure. But improving security remains a top concern. While the outgoing president fought Islamist militants in Nigeria's northeast, other groups have emerged in other parts of the country.
I feel fulfilled that we have started the Nigerian rebirth by taking the initial critical steps, and I am convinced the incoming administration will quicken the pace of this work.
Fixing the state of Nigeria's economy is also set to be one of President Tinubu's greatest challenges. Nigeria is struggling with record levels of debt and an inflation rate of 22%. And while the former governor of Lagos has promised to assemble the best hands to lead the country, analysts worry about the level of accountability his administration will bring. Nigeria also faces the highest alert levels of food insecurity, and UN agencies are warning that urgent attention is needed to save lives and jobs.
And in Zimbabwe, officials hope for vaccinations will tame a cholera outbreak as citizens continue to drink unsafe water. As Columbus Mabunga reports from Harare, authorities are urging people to practice good hygiene to contain the waterborne disease.
Zimbabwe Ministry of Health authorities say that cholera has claimed 28 lives since the end of April. Nearly 400 cases have been confirmed and more than 1,400 cases are suspected. Health organizations such as the Zimbabwe Association of Doctors for Human Rights blame the outbreak on the consumption of unsafe drinking water and the flow of sewage in some areas. Jacob Mafume, the mayor of Harare, says he is aware of drinking water and sewage problems.
We are responding to sewage issues as soon as we get a report on them. We are also increasing the water flow. We are also going to take advantage of the polio vaccination to vaccinate against cholera because most of the people who are getting this cholera are unvaccinated people.
Zimbabwe received heavy rains this year and most of its water sources are full. But clean water for drinking and household use is not getting to most citizens' homes because of power cuts and shortages of water treatment chemicals. Fanuel Mushonga says he has not had tap water in his home for 3 weeks. He says he is lucky to have a manual borehole nearby.
If I could get a chance to talk to leadership, I would plead with them to train our students studying to be engineers so that they could pump water from Lake Chivaro to the people in townships, and also to procure water treating chemicals so that people drink safe water.
Citizens should practice good hygiene and the government should do more to treat water and inform citizens, says Dr. Norman Matara, Secretary General of the Zimbabwe Association of Doctors for Human Rights.
We urge the government to continue the surveillance that they've been doing over the past weeks and over the past months so that we detect new epicenters of cholera outbreak. We also urge the government to continue with mass media awareness on the cholera outbreak and on ways people can prevent this cholera outbreak within their homes.
The World Health Organization says the extremely virulent disease is now in 13 African countries. Dr. Otim Patrick Ramadan is the World Health Organization's Regional Health Emergency Officer. He says that hygiene is not enough and that governments must provide clean water and hygienic facilities to eliminate the problem.
That is something that requires a lot of investment and that governments need to proactively work on. Then the second one, of course, is also addressing issues of hygiene of food at the community level, at the household level, and then working, because we have communities or areas where cholera has been endemic, and we need to have targeted interventions in those areas.
In 2008 and 2009, a cholera epidemic killed more than 4,000 people in Zimbabwe. According to a US report, the crisis was exacerbated in part by the politicization of water, health, and aid.
And in South Africa, a legal battle is being waged over people who live in shacks in Cape Town. City officials are reasonably confident they will win an order to tear down 300 shacks erected on pavements, under bridges, and even at historic landmarks. But human rights groups say it's not a done deal.
Since COVID struck 3 years ago, scores more homeless people have flocked to Cape Town's central business district. A court ruling during the pandemic made it difficult for officials to stop them from pitching tents and building makeshift shacks. Many have settled at this tourist attraction, the Castle of Good Hope, which was built by the colonizing Dutch in the 17th century. Abigail Mashonga is facing eviction.
I ended up living on the street because of mom passed away and my stepsister was so nasty.
Mashonga says homeless people are often harassed by police. These officers are looking for robbery suspects.
Very tough outside, it's not easy, you have to fight a lot of battles. Example, you want to go somewhere to something, things happen like this, there are people. Now the cops, they insult you.
Dean Ramjumia has been working with homeless people for 30 years. He's assisting the human rights lawyers who challenged the city's eviction bid through a non-profit organization called the Socio-Economic Rights Institute of South Africa.
People are here because it's close to resources. In the communities where most of our people come from, there is not the economic assistance, there is not intervention, social work service.
JP Smith heads up the Cape Town Mayor's Committee for Safety and Security. He says that while the city is still relatively safe, citizens are concerned about a rise in crime, substance abuse and people with mental illnesses. Smith says a national law that states no one can be evicted from their home without being provided alternative accommodation has made it almost impossible for the city to enforce many bylaws. The city wants to place homeless people in shelters but hasn't been able to because of legal challenges. He says it's very frustrating because several shelters in and around the central business district could accommodate those living in the street.
Especially when you have made available, viable and accessible and
and well-located accommodation for people, which accommodation has vacancies every single night. We publish those figures, and there is not a single night when the shelters are completely full.
In this case, the city is hoping all parties will be happy with the new shelter planned for the affluent seaside suburb of Greenpoint. Smith says if the situation continues unchecked, it could hurt the city's tourism and events industries, which employ tens of thousands of people and depend on safe, usable public spaces. The eviction court case will be heard in October.
As the United Nations call for more participation of women globally in peace and security efforts, West African women are playing a more prominent role in the region's military efforts to stop extremism. United States-led training is helping to bring more women to the front lines to win hearts and minds in terrorist hotspots.
Earlier in May, female soldiers of the Ghanaian Armed Forces underwent a debriefing, recapping what they learned about women, peace and security at US-run Flintlock exercise in March. Lieutenant Colonel Jacqueline Gali says the training helped her prepare for and understand why it's essential to have women on the front lines when countering terrorism.
I think that having women as peace builders on the team will help to curb the situation in the form of providing some form of relief for victims of violence, especially sexual violence, because most of these acts are perpetrated by males. And so they will be more comfortable to talk about those issues to the females.
According to the United States Institute of Peace, Women, Peace and Security is a policy framework that recognises that women must be critical actors in all efforts to achieve sustainable international peace and security. This can extend all the way from women accompanying male soldiers on outreach missions to terrorist-controlled villages to negotiating peace settlements at the highest levels of government. Flintlock, a US-led exercise held annually since 2005 to train security partners in West Africa, was held in Ghana and Ivory Coast this year. Both countries are grappling with terrorist incursions on their northern borders. For the first time, the exercise has made women, peace and security a central part of the event. Faye Kuvis is Deputy Chief of Staff for the US Special Operations Command Africa, SOCAF, which organised Flintlock. She says West African militaries had almost no capacity for women peacekeepers working on the ground before the training was introduced.
It is to work with our partners to build their civil military capacity, but from a female-forward perspective. In the U.S. And coalition partners during Iraq and Afghanistan, we called those teams female engagement teams or cultural support teams. So this is very much taking that same template, but implementing it with partners.
For example, in West Africa, cultural constraints around social interactions between men and women mean it is easier for female soldiers to win female hearts and minds in communities affected by terrorism. The UN is also making a push to involve more women in peace building and conflict prevention. As for Gali, she says she is excited about playing a frontline role in Ghana's anti-terror efforts.
If you're a woman, accept challenges. And like the oath we took before office, you go wherever ordered by land, sea and air, even at the peril of your life.
As the global push for women to play a more active role in peace building and counter-terrorism continues, many more will likely follow in her footsteps.
Egypt unearthed human and animal mummification workshops as well as 2 tombs in the ancient burial ground of Saqqara, officials said on May 27, marking the latest in a string of discoveries that the country hopes can help revive its vital tourism industry.
Seen by human eyes for the first time in millennia, within the vast Saqqara necropolis just south of the capital Cairo, archaeologists have discovered 2 human and animal embalming rooms in Egypt. It was on these stone slabs that the dead were mummified, with the practice also covering sacred animals like cats and crocodiles. Also unearthed 2 tombs, one of which belonged to Ney-Hezud-Bar, head of the scribes to the 5th dynasty around 4,500 years ago. Untouched for thousands of years, the colors are almost as bright as the day they were painted.
The paintings and inscriptions on the tomb are so amazing. They represent his religious and secular life. Because of his titles, we can see scenes of agriculture, harvesting, grazing, sacrificial slaughtering, and ranching. All of those scenes are in the tomb.
This site once served as the Egyptian capital. Back then it was called Memphis. Today it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and home to the oldest pyramid known. With over a dozen points of interest within the complex, the modern-day Egyptian government is hoping that this site and others like it prove to be enough of a draw to lure in millions of tourists. Cairo is pinning its hopes on a tourism injection to boost its sluggish economy and for levels to surpass those pre-pandemic. Around 13 million people came to the country before COVID. The government is looking to up that to 30 million within the next 5 years.
The celebrations come amid a growing concern about temperatures rising, glaciers and snow melting, and weather being harsh and unpredictable on the world's tallest mountain. Here's a report.
It was 70 years ago that man achieved the first ever ascent to Mount Everest. New Zealander Edmund Hillary and Nepali Tenzing Norgay Sherpa became the first to summit the world's highest mountain on May 29, 1953. Hundreds now climb the 8,849-meter peak every year, and the 8-day trek to the Everest Base Camp remains among the most popular hikes in Nepal among tens of thousands of annual tourists. For the locals, the popularity of Mount Everest is a matter of livelihood. In many homes here, 3 generations have found employment in mountaineering. The work is not without its risks, but far more lucrative than farming or yak herding. An experienced guide can make up to $10,000 in 3 months, several times the country's average annual income. Veteran mountain guide Ferba Tashi Sherpa was born and raised in a village some 10 kilometers from base camp. He grew up watching his father and uncles go to mountains for work and soon joined them on expeditions, eventually climbing Everest 21 times before he retired.
A lot has changed. There would be just a few expeditions before, but now there's so many every year. That means an increase in income. It's helped to improve the lifestyle here.
As the mountaineering community prepares to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the conquest of Mount Everest, they are also faced with growing concerns of climate change. Locals say they are already feeling the impact of melting glaciers and increasingly unpredictable weather.
The Mogadishu Book Fair, an annual literary event that was launched in 2015, took place last week after a 3-year break because of the COVID pandemic. The fair meant to promote reading and Somali culture as well as heritage by bringing together literary creatives and young people. It was held at the National Theatre of Somalia.
At the beginning of the event, a traditional dance performance was presented for the audience to enjoy. In the National Theatre, home to the traditional folk dancer team, a man dressed in a costume blew fire into the air as book lovers and writers watched. Mohammed Sheikh Ali, a graduate of Ohio State University, is the founder of the Mogadishu Book Fair. Starting in 2015, he has faced numerous challenges to host the event annually. His motivation is to promote reading, Somali culture, and heritage by bringing together literary creatives and young people.
My feelings towards holding this book fair after 3 years after the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, with such a large number of attendees, indicates that we have overcome the worry and pain caused by the pandemic that afflicted the country and the entire world.
Among the many international guests at the event is South African author and blogger Lerato Magwethe, who excitedly joined the dancing troupe.
This is such a privilege and an honor for me. I have wanted to come to Mogadishu since 2019. So for me to finally be here and to be here when there's a big cultural celebration is simply a dream come true.
Professor Mohammed Mukhtar is a lecturer at the University of Pennsylvania in the United States and a distinguished researcher of Somali history. He brought his book on the history of Somali people.
It is true that the book I wrote was not written for the purpose of making money, and its publication was encouraged by the youth here, as you can see, and they even sponsored its production. Since I am on its byline, that is why I am here, and I'm grateful for their encouragement.
The Mogadishu Book Fair is a good opportunity for budding authors to showcase their work. Aisha Hassan has written a book about the cordial ties between Turkey and Somalia.
I cannot express in words how happy I am to be able to display here the book that I have been writing for the past 3 years. This is my first time to show my book to the public.
Nasteha Ahmed encourages Somali children to read and write. She teaches them about their culture, poetry, and traditional Somali tales.
And the way the book fair was organized is the best I have seen, including the section for the children.
The founder, Muhammad Sheikh Ali, ignored negative perceptions on his home country to put together a literary event that has blossomed in a country where insurgency had become an obstacle to social and economic development.
Betingawo-ke lesikuphathele tona kule qhamuka ngephandle kwakuleli sithola simo selitulo sibahlola emakethe masibuya lungelele sits down nambonisi Bhembe lo ngumchumanisi welibandla letelkhetfo nemincele yetinkhundla ungayinzawo.
Welcome back. Sikuvusele nawo lo sanza kusivulela lapha esivetile ukuthi sidaba sikhulumisana na APC PRO Mbonisi Bhembe kukhuluma nje ngemalungiselelo elkhetfo njengoba savela sakhona nje siyakumleka ukuthi ama elections ngomsebenzi lobalekile lapha eveni ngaloko ukuthi sonke sive samaswati senelungelo noma ke responsibility ukuthi sibe yingcenye yawo ema elections. Amaswati ke ane duty futhi ukuthi akhona ku register for elections eminyaka wa 2023 kude batakhona ukuthi ba-elected leyo candidate yabo laba yethembako. Siyakhumulakene ukuthi i-voter registration yaqala mhla ka-10 May itawuphela ke mhla ka-14 June 2023. Kungumanje nje inombolo debamfula sebabhalisile dilanganisela ko-249,844 lekwenda ukuthi besilisa babe ngo-116,000 ukuthi besifazane babe ngo-132,856. Sifuna kukhuluma kabanti nje ngaye lapha babebhembe ngemthetho lo ngamele lona lokhetfo ngoba siyakhumula ukuthi lenganyelwe ngomthetho weminyaka wa 2013 i-voter registration act. Sifuna ukubuta ukuthi ngabe bamfula banjani abaqualify ukuthi bakhona ukubhalisela lekhetfo nalaba disqualifyiwe bantu laba kanjani. Sesivele sinaye lapha babebhembe sakuvusela emhlekiseni siyabonga ukuthi ube nathi nje tosichazela kabanti nje ngawo umthetho welkhetho nokuva nje malungiselelo ukuthi ahamba kanjani kube nje kusiniketa nje leso sithombe babebhembe. I think sengidivedile inombolo debamfula sebabhalisile luhamba kanjani nje vele lona libhaliso.
Siyabonga kusemukela Mthombeni sivusele emaswati emagumbini lamane emhlaba silibandla lelibukwenizabade lokhetho siyathokoda ngawo umsebenzi lesiwubona kwemaswati lawendako njengalokho sowudivedile inombolo ukuthi sethi eyafika kumbe kulo 250,000 sinako kwethemba lokuthi kutawuthi lamhlanje nasiligocota lilanga sithi khanze sesisebentela ukuthi sesisondzela ku 300,000 le kutakwenda lo ukuthi sesingetulu kwesigaba lesibe sisebenta ngeminyaka wa 2018 utawukhumbula 2018 ukuthi besabana 547,000 wabantu le singasho ukuthi eMaswati sibabekele inzambo yini kepha kucathanisa nje ukuthi ungabe umsebenzi uhamba kanjani siyathokoza thina kakhulu ngoba sicale sina zero kude bantu labebabhalisile lekwenta ukuthi bonke laba labangu-250 lasebabhalisile nyalo sibamukele ngetendla letitfokomele siphindze futhi sibaqinisekise ukuthi bende umsebenzi lo muhle umsebenzi lo landzela intsandvo yesive sikhutsate labasengakabhali ukuthi labangabhalisi ukuthi abasondzele kubhalisa lona njengalokhu sokubekile umsebenzi wabo uphizela ilungelo labo leba lobekwe ngumthetho-sisekelo leli bandla lona lenda nje ukuthi wendeke melula lo msebenzi liya-facilitator nganeno kwaloko bantfu labafanele ukuthi balende lukhetfo ngeMaswati la khona sicela ukuthi sesivile ngandlebenye ukuthi bakhona labanye lababona ngalenye indlela lo msebenzi siyacela lokuthi kuloko kungaboni ngasolinye akube khona kubeketelelana political tolerance njengetimiso tentsandvo yesive tiveta lo ukuthi kuyawuthi lapho umcondvo longasaboni ngalisolinye khona lomunye akhone kumvumela lomunye akwende loku la ufisile ukuthi akwende kwathi lo munye naye asesemile naye njengaloku sivile kuna asiyi siyaya kulabayako umnyango uvulekile umthetho-sisekelo nemithetho yonke lekhona hayi eveni kodwa nasemhlabeni wonke jikelele njengaloku singeke siyekele ukuthinza umthetho we-Universal Declaration of Human Rights Article 21 lo wavumelako eMaswati nobe bantu kulelo live ukuthi babe ingcenye yalolu khetho sineke silandzela timiso letibekwe ngumhlaba ukuthi uma ngabe senda lukhetho akube lukhetho lolutawuvumela wonke umuntu lona leminyaka leshumi yesiphohlongo kuya edulu saphinde sangeda singeMaswati ukuthi kungabi ngeMaswati kuphela labhaliseka nobe langena elukhethweni kepha nebantfu labanye labangasiwe eMaswati lesebahleti lapha eSwatini iminyaka lesihlanu kuya edulu bahleli ngalokho semthethweni nabo banalo ilungelo ukuthi bangangenela umsebenzi welukhetho bahambe bayokhetha ngoba letindzaba tentuthuko lesinato ngetinkundla emangweni yonke nabo tiyabatsinza ngabo siyafuna ukuthi nabo basifake isandla ekuphathweni kwalo lelive
so sovedile babebhembe nje kulabo labaqualifya ukuthi bangakhona ukubhalisela lo khetho I think lenye lo ivedile indzaba yokuthi kumele kube ngumfundisi oseneminyaka lelishumi nesiphohlongo kubuda nje nakulonye lokumcoka I think lokunye kuvetwa abantu ku social media silo bayabuda imibuto lokuthi ingabe umfundisi ona 17 years nyalo nje mhlambe lokungumay lukhetho litawucala bo August September kepha yena utawuthinisha lo 18 ngibekise nga December ingabe leyo mvulo uvumelekile ukuthi angakhona kubhalisa
uma sifunza umthetho-sisekelo ku-section 88 usibekela ukuthi uyawubhalisa uma uneminyaka lelishumi nesiphohlongo lokusho ukuthi uma ngabe ungaphansi kwale minyaka lelishumi nesiphohlongo awukhoni lokubhalisa lokuthi kuyawuthi kufika likhethwa engcenye sowunayo leminyaka lelishumi nesiphohlongo ngetulu akusiko uma ngabe ufunza lo mthetho netinkantolo nathi sichasela ngaleso sihluko silisho ukuthi kuphela umuntu losena 18 nemshini ke leso wabe sesowuyakhiwa ukuthi ubhalise bantfu nawo uthi nawo kubalela leminyaka ukhanza ukuthi una 17 weminyaka netinyanga leti ngu11 uyakwalela ukuthi ungene uvele kwencabele nje ukuthi u-underage kungako labanye bake bavela etiteshini bathi bayobhalisa bathi batawugucuka lo 18 years khona la kulo June 14 nguphela labatawuthi 18 years nga June 14 labatawukhona lo tawuthi 18 years nga June 15 ngenhlanhla lembi ngekulandzela umthetho-sisekelo nobe ke uma ngabe ngifuna uku-underline lo ukuthi uma ngabe libandla lingenda ukuthi kube ne-extension lesingeke sathi ukuthi itawube ibuya kuphi. Uma ngabe ingaba khona i-extension sekungilabo-ke futhi nabo labatawukhona ukuthi babhalise. Nganeno kwaloko liciniso lithi kufanele ube na 18 years ukuze ukuthi uyokhona ukubhalisa.
Shothi kude kwabo vele kubuhlungu lokho. So sesithi inzile ndzaba yalabo labaqualifya ko babebhembe sesifuna kubuka ke manje laba tawukhanza ukuthi sebaya disqualified kulolu luhla lwebantu laba register. I think nangifunza nje lo mthetho le Voter Registration Act yavetela ukuthi lesinye izizathu kungaba ukuthi mhlambe so declaration as umuntu longaphilile kahle engqomveni. Ingabe ngitiphi nje letinye itimvu letingenda ukuthi bamfu babe disqualified.
Umthetho lo buke lukhetho nobe live laseSwatini belifisela ukuthi bonke abantu ngathi bangaba ingcenye yalo lukhetho ngaphandle kokubandlulula. Kepha kwaba khona timiso letside letholakala ukuthi nemhlaba wonke jikelele uyatilandzela letfaka ekhathi ukuthi umuntu loseka boshiwe nobe wagwetshwa inzambo wagwetshwa ukuthi uyawulenga labo bamvu labo bese abasalungeneli lukhetho ngoba bona vele impilo yabo sekuyabonakala ukuthi iyawuphelela lengekhathi sebede ukuthi batawuphuma baye esiveni bahlanganyele nesive bahlanganyele nayo intuthuko yelive. Labanye ke lababoshiwe ngetigwebo letitsite kungenteka ukhanze ukuthi tiyahamba tiyofika kubo 15 years nobe ngangikuphi la tifika khona kepha tingasho ukuthi lo mvu uyawulenga nobe so ugwetshwe for life enkantolo ngulabo nje kuphela labatawusalela ngaphandle. Neno kwaloko bonke labanye abantu labangemaswati nalabahleli lapha eSwatini ngalokho semthethweni bavumelekile ukuthi babe ingcenye yawo lo msebenzi. Bewubukale ukuthi lesigaba sale universal suffrage lokuthi bonke umuntu lokhona lapha eSwatini akhone ukuthi abhalise. Libandla nawo umthetho weSwatini wetamile ukuthi uluvule lelinethi kubangene bonke bantu batoba ingcenye yawo lo msebenzi ngoba imcoka kakhulu etimpilweni temaswati ikakhulu ekufakeni isandla ekuphatheni lelive.
Njengoba senibonile nje babebhembe nivakashele nethi ivakashite engwenyama tabhalisa nathi engabe lokho kuhambeka kanjani bakutfoketela kanganani ukuthi nabo bavumelekile ukuthi babe ingcenye yekubhalisa.
Banakethu nabotsatse wethu labangekhathi balitfokotele lona lelo thuba lelo empeleni labanye bavetile lokuthi kutawuthi nakushaya lesikhathi selukhetho babe sebangaphandle kepha ke kube besingakabasonzeteli lo msebenzi wekubhalisa bebatawuncuncutheka ngaphandle babukele emaswati akhetha kanti nabo phela bayingcenye yawo emaswati phinze futhi sikholelwa lokuthi lengekhathi bebawulungisiswa tigwegwe lapho khona ukhanze ukuthi bese bayashayisana nemithetho nenhlala kahle yelive sebaphumile ke manje sebalungisisiwe kungaba ubhlungu lokuthi live ngaphandle bese alisabamukeli lokuthi asithatha ke ukuthi kusimikise nakuko inzima lapho khona sifisa ukuthi emaswati ungathi angabamukela nembala netandla letithokomele laba bekunene ikakhulu nalaba lotawukhanza ukuthi solo ngasikhathi sekuvota bangekhathi sebafaka emavoti abo kuke kwaba khona kusola lowo msebenzi lowo ukuthi lapha ngathi seyimbombayi liciniso libandla lelibukela indzaba delikhetho liwenda ngekuthembeka lo msebenzi lo ukuthi lamavoti abo kusuke kuvote bona labanakethu nabotsatsefu lebalengekhathi mavoti abo siwafake ephepheni lelenda ukuthi lingavuleki uma ulivula alisavaleki lesi kutawuba ke ngombuto ukuthi leli ke selivuleleni futhi libandla lifuna kube mema laba bokalajane nobe laba bebawukhethiwe ukuthi babe khona kulo msebenzi bayawubona nekuthi bangaphinze babhale nedinombolo dala umuntu ukuthi uma ngabe sekavotile leli phepha lakhe lifakwe envelopeni lenginombolo bani kwentela ukuthi ngaphandle uma ngabe sesiyovota ngalelo langa lelo ngumgcibelo nobe loyo lesihlanu wamhla ka 29 bese sesiyahlola lokuthi vele kude yini lapho kube khona kushintshashintshana khona siyakholwa ukuthi eMaswati athathi awulandzela lo msebenzi abone ukuthi lizinga lebucotfo ekwendeni lo msebenzi lowo usedulu kakhulu. Lokho ngikusho angikukhohlwa lokuthi iParliament isengenta lo ukuthi sale ithi akubalwe ngaleso sikhathi nobe nasicetha kuvota. Uma ngabe sifike kuleso sigaba leso ke kuyawuba melula kakhulu ukuthi siyawuthi nasicetha nje kubavotisa ngekhathi bese sesiyawabala emavota abo siphuma siya sesiya elikhethweni lolutabelo senkundleni lolutabelo semangweni sesiyade ukuthi basivotele njani labantu abebangekhathi.
Okay. So ukume nje lesele nje question lana kulabo laba qualifya kuba bebhembe ngifuna uvela ukuthi ngabe kunemumfu lo qualifya ku register indzaweni letiningi engabe ngiphi lena kahle kahle la lekuvumeleke ukuthi avotele kiyo indzawo legal ukuthi a register kiyo.
Umthetho lo ubuke tindzaba telukhetho i-Voter Registration Act ubeke tabadinzathu le khona sifuna ukuthi sisebenzise umgomo lobuke ukhetho lolungeyo genuine elections ngokuthi uthi akube khona i-universal equal suffrage. Equal suffrage uthi umuntu akabe nelivoti linye kulolukhetho, one man one vote. Ubeka ke sigaba lapho khona uthi kunemuntu longendeka ukhanzeka ukuthi unelikhaya eSteki, unelikhaya eSpiki, unelikhaya eMbabane, unelikhaya kaManzini enhlangano, dinengi letindzawo lapho khona akhona khona. Siyacela ukuthi lo wekunene amane asikhethele ibe yinye indzawo. Umthetho i-voter registration ithi umuntu angavota la ahlala khona residence, umuntu angavota lapho khona anelikhaya khona, umuntu angavota lapho khona asebentela khona. Kepha kuto tonke letigaba akakhethe linye indzawo. Siyanxusa ukuthi ungathi eMaswati angabuka la angathi ahlala ngakhona kakhulu lapho achitha isikhathi sawo khona kakhulu kunalapho ubuyukhanze ukuthi bavakashela khona ngoba ugcina sowusivakashi nembala kuleli tinye indzawo. Mangabe uhlali kakhulu nje emsebentini siyade ukuthi umsebenzi uyathumbana kunengi lotawufuna tinvo ungathi tingathuthuka kuleyo ndzawo lohlala kuyo lofaka ekhathi imigwaco lokubuka engathi ukuthi lusito lwemanti tibhedlela nako konke lokunye uyakuthola kuleyo ndzawo. Kepha uthola ukuthi lo munye uthi sesiyashaya isikhathi sengiyawupentshelwa ngiye ekhaya nembala ngeke kube kuhlakanipha ukuthi lo mvulo bese sowubhalisela ukuthi utawuvota la asebentela khona kanzi utawuthi nasekacedzile kuvota bese sowubuyela ekhaya. Loyo kweseka ngakhetha lelenye inzima yokuthi uyovotela ekhaya kude ukuthi akhone kuhlanganyela nabo bonke labantu labe bakhethiwe, akhone kufaka imibono, akhone nokuthi sisengakefiki nokuthi sebayasebenta abakhethe kuleyo nkundla latabe ahlala khona ekhaya kubo. Siyakhethelela nje ukuthi kuleti gaba letinzathu akakhethe yinye indzawo la uhlala khona residence, la unelikhaya khona you return home nobe la usebentela khona konke kuvumelekile kusemthethweni kodwa kube ngiyinye indzawo kuleti nkundla leti ngu-59.
Okay, kwegcina nje kafishane nje babembe sina 1 minute. Ingabe mhlambe labafise kubuta nje leminye imibuto bachumana nani kanjani?
Libandla linayo inombolo yamahala lo ushayelako ithi 411 uyashaya licingo ubute sinayo futhi namakhasi ethu abongcondo bomshini bo Facebook bo Twitter bo YouTube na website elections.org.sz konke lemininingwane ikhona. Kanti na WhatsApp unga-WhatsApp ku 76063941 kude ukuthi eMaswati alithole lusito nobe uthi ngoba kukhona la kwavela khona ukuthi labanye abakayitholi kahle lembiko ma-SMS nabacetha kubhalisa bangasithinza kuleto nombolo sitawubahlolela kulomshini omkhulu ukuthi babhalisekile yini. Sifisele eMaswati ukuchubeka nekubhalisa lokuhle nelukhetho loluhle lomnyaka wa 2023.
Asibonga kakhulu babhembe sesema ukuthi nase evikini litako sidawuba nawo ukuthi utasiphindza usichazile kabanti ngawo emalungiselelo elukhetho besikhulumisana naye PRO walolu bandla letelukhetho nemingcele yetinkundla nje obutakhumula ukuthi umnyaka lomkhulu this year njengoba sekuvele seaqalile emalungiselelo elukhetho kungumanje kusabhaliswa asike kubhaliswa kuyaphela mhla ka 14 June kulomnyaka losedulu. Asibathole emakethe sidaba esiqhubeka.
The outlook for the global economy has slightly improved since our last forecast, but the pace of trade expansion in 2023 is still expected to be subpar. So we are now projecting a merchandise trade volume growth of 1.7% in 2023. Goods trade was remarkably resilient for most of 2022, despite a very challenging macro environment. During the first 3 quarters of 2022, year-on-year trade volume growth actually averaged 4.3%, but an abrupt decline in the fourth quarter then dragged growth down for the year to 2.7%. The downside risks to the forecast include the vulnerabilities that have been revealed in the banking sector of late. It appears that these recent banking failures in the US and Europe have been mostly contained, but rapidly increasing interest rates could create further strains in financial markets that then could, of course, also have implications for international trade. But there's also some upside potential, particularly from the relaxation of COVID-19 restrictions in China, particularly for services such as travel and transport. And of course, a peaceful end to the war in Ukraine and a reduction in broader geopolitical tensions would also greatly improve the outlook for the global economy.
The fact is that trade in digitally delivered services is booming. According to our estimates, global export reached $3.82 trillion in 2022. And what is impressive about these services is the pace of growth, an almost fourfold increase in value since 2005. In 2022, digitally delivered services accounted for 54% of global services trade, and what is more interesting is that they account for a fast-growing share of total trade, and this gives us a clear signal that the future of trade is services and it is digital.
Global GDP is expected to return to more normal levels, and trade growth is expected to rebound in line with that. The rebound is slightly stronger, but that's just part of the nature of trade. Trade tends to be more volatile. So when world GDP increases, trade tends to increase more. When world GDP declines, trade tends to move in the same direction, but just more so. So you get a kind of a whipsaw effect.
Countries that were heavily exposed to falling exports from Ukraine and also Russia, both in energy products as well as in food products, by and large were able to cope quite well by securing alternative sources of supply, sometimes also switching to other goods. To me, this really is a clear indication of how important it is to have open markets. In some sense, outside options are what you need in times of crisis, and outside options is exactly what the multilateral trading system gives you.
Well, there was a clip showing us ukuthi umhlaba wonke ume kanjani ngetindzaba trade, and the biggest takeaway is that the world is growing towards indzawo lapho khona digital trading, or that the digital economy is playing a significant role in global trade. Njengoba basho ukuthi it counts to 54% of global trade, and we would see is the growing industry in terms of tindzaba tekutsengiselana. I think it is very interesting, Lulu, ukuthi Africa yonke isabuke yona advent ye-AfCFTA ukuthi tindzaba tekutsengiselana cishe kade nje livekatini lonke le-Africa tibe seamless, kubukwa ukuthi indzaba ye-Africa kube ibitwe nge-borderless Africa, ukuthi abantu batakhona ku-trade without ama-barriers lamaningi, kube nema-incentives, ukuthi-ke sifundza nje se-Africa sonke sithuthuke tindzabeni te-trade. I think it is interesting ukuthi such is the case, nokuthi-ke live lakangwane seliwendile ma-measures to put itself in a position where it is indeed an export-led economy, as Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade, Manqoba Khumalo, always puts it, kutsi live la kangwane liphokophelele ekutheni libe private sector-led economy, lay export-led economy. Sikubonile some of the decisions labawathethe ekutheni Oshuk border post operate 24 hours. Now to adopt that Lavomisa border post, should all those discussions labawendako with the Ministry of Home Affairs pass, ngoba siyabona ukuthi in the Ministry of Public Works and Transport, the Ministry of Home Affairs, as Minister Manqoba Khumalo always says, they are working in perfect harmony. Eqiniseni ukuthi indaba tekuthengiselana lapha event ihamba embili lingena njani ngelitiko le-Public Works and Transport, lingena ngokuthi imigwaco yethu lapha kaNgwane ngiyo lesibeka ezingeni lapho khona iSADC region yonke livela kaNgwane labekwa nga-2021 ukuthi it is #1 in trading across borders. Invawo lenhle kakhulu ke leyo masibuka dona indaba tekuthengiselana ukuthi litiko la-Commerce, Industry and Trade is indeed making measures to make us an export-led economy. And I think, coming back from that interview that we had with Thembinkosi Dube, kubuketa nje tindzaba te-economy siyathi ukuthi i-trade idlala indima lenkulu kangakanani etindzabeni te-economy. It was a sobering interview. Ngimtshela kona nje Mr. Dube off air nasiqeda interview ukuthi it is very sobering and very necessary masibuka ukuthi sibuya kuyo i-weekend labathi ke abantu labaningi yi-weekend lenkulu, where people have been spending money, some are spending money recklessly, and I'm saying this because ngibabonile some of the WhatsApp statuses bantu baposta ema-payslip abo bakhombisa lokuthi nje baspendi imali leningi kule mphela sonto, which wasn't really wise, especially looking at the fact that we are living in trying economic times. September from that interview, but awukhona noma nje kusele 3 weeks angithi mabom 4 weeks is whole again in most organizations and companies bantu kwe-budget angcono kwenta sound decisions ngoba uma utikhanza sowuspend imali kabi ufaka abantu labaningi enkingeni.
Yes, because I think lokuthetha nje kule interview yakho Thembinkosi is that ucelile lokuthi singathathi nje unnecessary loans. I think uma uthatha i-loan kumele kube i-loan letakusita wena uma mhlawumbe you're investing that money hayi nje ukuthi uthathe loan ukuthi you're taking a trip to Durban or Cape Town. I think balekile lokho looking at lesimo leskiso nje economically, you can't just take a loan to go and have fun.
Kanti ke sithi insizwe nenzaba kancane ukuthi nalokho investors trick ngoba kufuna utfole that window of opportunity or something like that, that is going to give you your profits. Ngoba kulesikhathi sanyalo people are broke, if we're being honest. Whatever you're investing in, people need to buy that. It has to be an essential need. And how many of those opportunities are there? It's quite a tricky time to live under. And as he put it, we are hoping ukuthi i-fiscals now policy makers monetary but awenda decisions la awenda ukuthi sikhone kuphila kangcono. And he projected ukuthi, just like the IMF has said, probably next year sitawubona impilo tishintsha sikhona futhi ku-afford tintfo etitolo. Yeah.
Right, yeah, and if you've just joined us, siphindze sakhulumisana naye PRO welibandla lehealthcare nemincele EBC Mbonisi Pembe asiniketa nje update ukuthi kubhalisela kuhamba kanjani. I think lokhu kuvelile nje ukuthi they are approaching 300,000. They are approaching the 300,000 mark bamvula sebabhalisele lokhetfo. I think lakuvedile lokunyenza beke ukuthi lokhetfo lakucala bamvula babhalisela lokhetfo bayifika ku 500,000, so yakholela ukuthi this year na 13 nombolo titawufika etindlula. I think it's so indzaba lo umbuto longiphathise wona indzaba yokuthi ama 17-year-olds that are turning 18 probably in December bayakhona ukubhalisela uthi nje no umthetho awuvumi lokho not until they reach or they turn 18 years ngaleyo mnyaka lo, but ushido ukuthi mangabe they are going to turn 18 years before mhla 14 June but awukhona ke kulibhalisela hlelo. I think nalenye nje indzaba levelile indzaba yayo yelabo labaqualifyako ukuthi umove lo qualifyako ngiloyo lona 18 years ngilelo Eswatini lohlala Eswatini kanye naloyo lesekahleli lapha Eswatini iminyaka lengetulu kwalesihlanu futhi lona maphepha ekuprova lokho ukuthi sohlela lapha Eswatini sikhathi lesisinathi nje inombolo yaveta ukuthi as at 29 May 2023 bamfula sebabhalisile total registrations is 249,844 bese ama-male registrants bona ngu-116,988 bese
Yeah.
ukuthi besifazane bona bangu-132,856.
That's an interesting stat, Lulu.
Yeah.
And you know, some people would like to say bantu besilisa bathanda kuhulisa tinyawo, and those numbers may reflect that, but they always seem to forget ukuthi women are, you know, more than men in terms of, you know, the demographic dividend, in terms of population nibanengi kunathi. So mina nje nangibona the discrepancy ime kanjena ngeke bese ngithi bantu besilisa aba-register. In fact, mangibuka nje le malayini ngivame kubona bona sengiyakhuluma. But anyway, I think what's also interesting is seeing, you know, the regional discrepancies, and rather, you know, the way people are voting, are registering to vote regionally. Sibonile ukuthi Manzini region ihamba embili so far, sitting at 71,011 people asebabhalisile. Inombolo leti tawushintsha sukwini lalamuhla ngoba phela abantu babhalisa every day. Hoho ume ku 70,760. Ngiyasibona nje steshi sekubhalisa lesi within edolobheni lapha kubo corporate place nalapha ke embi kwabo Edgars. Maswati nje siyathemba ukuthi imalayini ataba mathe lapho. Libonjeni 57,223 Shiselweni. Idolobha lelincane Shiselweni. Sifundza sashiselweni isincane. So let nombolo nje uma ngabe tisonzele kuPolibonjeni okay, Hoho and Manzini are quite far, but I think inombolo ejabulisa as Ashila PRO.
Yeah, all right. Thanks so much for joining us. Kanti uma ngabe usesenembuto leminingi ungashayela i-toll-free line yakhona ka-ABC lethi 411. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a lovely day.
Let's live it up and party and have cracking good fun. When it comes to entertainment, DSTV's number one.
Is everybody ready to go, go, go?
We've got the zaniest characters to transport you away. The party is cracking, so why not come play? You're gonna love it. We've got so many channels and a ton of new shows, like Disney and Nickelodeon, where anything goes. So live it up with DSTV. We bring the fun. You know we're number one.